I still remember that morning, bright, warm, and deceptively easy. The kind of day where the forest feels like an old friend inviting you in, and you can't help but accept. There were 5 of us, me, my lifelong buddy Jake, the twins, Sarah and Sam, and Ryan, who'd driven up from the city for what he called a mental detox. We'd hiked that trail near Bear Hollow a dozen times, maybe more. It curved through pine ridges and low valleys, crossing a shallow creek before looping back toward the lake. Familiar ground. So when Jake spotted a faint path cutting off to the right, barely visible under the ferns, it felt harmless enough when he said, "Bet this cuts across to the ridge faster." The rest of us hesitated only a second. We'd done longer treks, harder climbs, even bushwhacked before, when trails washed out. A small shortcut seemed like nothing. The air was thick with the scent of sun-warmed pine and wet earth, and our packs were light. So we turned off the main trail. Just a handful of footprints veering into the unknown. At first it went well. The faint path wound gently downhill, soft earth underfoot, birdsong floating through the canopy. Ryan whistled a tune. The twins teased each other about who'd spot the lake first. And Jake led confidently, as though he'd walked that way before. But within 15 minutes, the faint path began to fade. By 20, it was gone. "Maybe it picks up over that rise," Jake said, brushing aside a branch. We followed, trusting him, trusting the forest even more. But the rise turned into a dense thicket. Thorn bushes clawing at our clothes, vines tripping our steps. The air felt different there, heavier somehow, muffled. I remember glancing back and realizing I couldn't see where we'd come from. We pressed on anyway, because turning back never feels as smart as it should. The sunlight slanted through the trees, dappling the ground, but it was getting hard to tell which way was east. Sam checked his compass, muttering, "We're still heading toward the lake," though he didn't sound sure. The forest swallowed sound, replaced it with the dry hum of insects idea. I didn't say it out loud, but I already knew he was right. We stopped in a small clearing where the ground dipped and the light pooled like gold through the branches. Everyone dropped their packs, breathing heavy, trying not to say what we were all thinking. The silence pressed down like the humidity, thick and unspoken. Sarah fished the map from her pack, spreading it on a flat rock, but her hands trembled slightly. "We can't be far," she said, voice too high, "if we just keep heading west." "West of what?" Ryan snapped, pushing his damp hair off his forehead. "We don't even know which direction that is anymore. My phone's dead, and I haven't seen a single landmark in the last hour." Jake crouched beside the map, tracing invisible lines with his finger, then looked up at me. His usual confidence had slipped away. "We'll find our way back. We just need to keep calm," he said. But his eyes darted toward the trees like he expected the trail to magically appear. Sam pulled out his compass again, frowning. "This thing's acting weird. Needle keeps drifting." He tapped it with his finger, but it just spun lazily before settling somewhere uncertain. I could feel unease tightening around the group, an invisible cord pulling us all apart. The forest around us was too quiet now, no wind, no birds. Just the faint buzz of mosquitoes and the drip of water from leaves. The trees grew close together, their trunks dark and slick with moss. The smell of damp earth filled my lungs. I thought of the familiar trail, how open and welcoming it felt, and how this place, only a few hundred yards off, felt older, like something untouched for a long time. We decided to move again, following what we hoped was a downward slope toward water. It was slow going, brambles catching our legs, thorns tearing at sleeves. At one point, Sarah tripped and scraped her knee. Jake stopped to help her, but the rest of us kept walking a few paces ahead. When I turned back, they were half hidden behind a curtain of vines, and for a second it looked like the forest was swallowing them whole. We finally stumbled upon a shallow ravine where a trickle of water ran earth. And that's when Sarah said softly, "I think we've gone in a circle." I wanted to tell her she was wrong, but when I looked around, I recognized the same split tree with the scar of lightning down its side. My stomach dropped. She was right. We'd been walking for hours, and somehow we were right back where we started. That realization hit us like a stone to the chest. No one spoke for a long while. We just stood there, staring at that scarred tree as if it had been waiting for us to notice it all along. The shadows were longer now, the forest dimming to that strange twilight where it's hard to tell if the sun's setting or the canopy is simply too thick. A cool breeze drifted through, carrying the smell of damp leaves and something faintly sour, like decay. Ryan broke the silence first. "We've been walking in circles for hours. This is ridiculous." He dropped his pack, frustration etched across his face. "We should have stayed on the trail like normal people." Jake bristled. "Hey, I said it was just a shortcut. Nobody had to follow." That sparked something. The tension that had been simmering all afternoon boiled over. Words flew, accusations, sarcasm, the kind of sharp jabs people throw when they're scared but don't want to admit it. Sarah snapped at Ryan for complaining without helping. Sam told Jake to stop pretending he knew where we were going, and I just stood there, feeling the weight of it all pressing down. The forest around us seemed to listen. Every echo of our voices bounced off the trees and came back softer, like whispers. Finally, I raised my hands. "Enough. We're all tired, we're all lost, and yelling won't fix it." My voice came out louder than I meant, but it did the trick. Everyone fell silent again. We took a break, huddled in that clearing beneath the lightning-scarred tree. I could hear my own heartbeat, fast and uneven. Somewhere in the distance, a woodpecker drummed. Or maybe it was just branches knocking in the wind. Either way, it reminded me how far from the main trail we'd gone. Firelight, snapping twigs as it went. We froze, listening, until it faded into the distance. Probably a deer, we told ourselves. Probably. When I finally lay back on my sleeping pad, staring up at the shifting shadows, I couldn't help but think how easy it is to lose your bearings. One small choice, a shortcut, and suddenly the world you thought you knew feels foreign. Before sleep took me, I whispered into the dark, mostly to reassure myself. Tomorrow, we'll find our way out. But even as I said it, I wasn't sure I believed it. Morning came slow, grey and heavy. I woke to the sound of dripping leaves and the faint hiss of mist falling through the canopy. Our small fire had burned down to a pile of wet ash, and the air smelled of smoke and damp pine. For a moment, lying there in my sleeping bag, I could almost pretend we were on any normal camping trip. But then I saw the others. Jake, hunched over his pack. Sarah rubbing her arms for warmth. Ryan, sitting apart from the group, staring into the fog like it might offer a way out. No one said much while we packed up. The silence felt different now. Not angry, just drained. When we finally started walking, the forest had changed again. The mist softened everything, blurring the edges of trees and stones. The trail, or what we hoped was a trail, sloped downward, slick with moss. Each step squelched in the mud, and more than once someone slipped. After an hour, we reached what looked like a dry creek bed. The rocks were smooth, water-worn, and I figured if we followed it long enough, It might lead to a larger stream. "Downhill's our best bet," I said. "Water always leads somewhere." So down we went. The walls of the ravine grew steeper, closing in until we were moving single file. The twins took the lead this time, careful but steady. At one point, Sam called back, "Looks like it opens up ahead." And just as he said it, the ground beneath him gave way. He slid about 10 feet down into a shallow drop, arms flailing, and landed hard in a tangle of roots. "Sam!" Sarah yelled, scrambling after. Didn't stop. I just kept moving, driven by the thought of finally breaking free from that maze of trees. When we reached the top, breathless and scraped, the view hit us hard. Miles of forest stretched out in every direction, dense, unbroken, endless green. No lake, no trail, just wilderness. Ryan cursed under his breath. Sarah sank to her knees, pressing her palms into the dirt. Jake turned slowly, scanning the horizon like he could will something familiar into existence. "We can't be that far," he said quietly. "We just can't." But the silence that followed said otherwise. That was the first time I saw fear settle deep in everyone's eyes. Not the kind that makes you shout or run, but the quieter kind. The one that whispers you might not get out by nightfall. And as the wind moved through the treetops, cold and distant, it sounded almost like the forest was laughing at us. We lingered on that ridge far too long, each of us staring out at the sea of trees, as if, by sheer will, we could force a trail or a landmark to appear. But there was nothing, just miles of unbroken wilderness fading into mist. The weight of it settled on us like a stone. Finally, Sarah stood up, brushing dirt from her knees. "We can't stay here," she said quietly. "If we keep climbing west, we'll hit the lake eventually." No one argued. We started down the opposite slope, slower now, the forest closing in again. It wasn't long before the terrain grew rough. Fallen trunks, tangled undergrowth, and roots thick as ropes beneath our boots. Conversation dwindled to short, practical bursts. "Watch that step. Hold that branch. You good?" The laughter that had filled the morning before was long gone. By late afternoon, the air changed. It grew cooler, moister. The scent of water reached us first, clean and sharp. Then came the sound, faint but steady. The trickle of a stream. When we broke through the brush, the relief was almost dizzying. The stream wasn't wide, maybe 5 feet across. We'd left that morning. All that trouble, all that fear, and our shortcut had carried us in one massive, miserable loop. As we hiked back toward camp in the fading light, no one complained. We didn't need to. The lesson had carved itself deep enough. Sometimes the long way isn't the waste of time you think it is. It's the one that gets you home. That night, around the campfire, we didn't talk much. The flames cracked softly, sparks rising into the dark. And I remember looking around at the others, mud-streaked, sore, but safe, and feeling an odd sort of gratitude for the forest, for the company, even for the mistakes that reminded us how small we really are out there. When Jake finally raised his mug and said, "To shortcuts," we all laughed. A tired, knowing laugh. The kind you only earn by getting lost and finding your way back the hard way.